As you can see, I'm a big fan of Solo Leveling. It was the first power fantasy / what if dungeons were in real life manhwa I had ever read, and once I started it, I was physically incapable of putting it down until I had caught up to where it was up to. So, when it was announced it was finally getting an anime, I was very excited. When it was announced the studio adapting it would be A1 Pictures, I was less excited. Now, a whole 18 months since they first announced it, the first few episodes have finally come out. Way after all the hype has died down. An odd marketing choice to be sure. Even though I was cautious of the news of A1 being at the helm of this project, I was still optimistic. Sure, they generally have a very generic animation style and have never done anything super creative with their source material outside of a few one-offs, but they've still done some good action scenes. I remember when Sword Art Online was the shit and all anyone could talk about was Kirito dual wielding. That reference is also a little behind the scenes look at how long I've been into anime. But I do feel like A1 Pictures kinda had the odds stacked against them with this one. Shonen fans have come to expect Jujutsu Kaisen and Chainsaw Man levels of quality in the animation for these kind of adaptations, and that was just never gonna happen with A1, no matter how much they overworked their staff. They simply don't have the experience of working on an action show of that scale. Plus, this is a beloved IP that everyone will be mad about if it doesn't live up to their expectations. Plus, the artist who drew for the Solo Leveling manhwa passed away just as it was finishing up, so this also needs to be something that lives up to their legacy. So, that being said, how is the anime? It's kinda so-so. Grab a cup of tea and strap in, boys, this is gonna be a long one. I'd love to give a definitive, it sucks, don't bother watching it, or it's amazing, a must-watch. But at this point, it kind of isn't either. A part of that is just that it hasn't finished the first season yet. As of this recording, it's up to episode 6. It feels unfair to fully judge something until you've seen all of it. The other part of it is, do you try and judge it based on whether it's a good anime on its own, or whether it stands up to the source material? As an anime on its own, it's fine. In comparison to the manhwa, it's a little worse overall. And I haven't read the novels, so I can't compare it to that. Yes, for those of you who didn't know, Solo Leveling was originally a novel. For a story as famous and strong as Solo Leveling is though, I kinda wanted more than just fine or passable. With the right attention, I feel like it could have been epic. They definitely f***ed up with the earlier episodes. The first one is real not interesting. They dump a crazy amount of exposition on the audience almost immediately, which may be important for setting up the world, but let me tell you, it is not the way you hook someone in to a new story. That can all come later. Just focus on the drama and the mystery for now, I beg. Tell us all those nitty-gritty details once you've already got us hooked on the interesting concept, which Solo Leveling does have. Dungeons IRL might be a dime a dozen concept today in manhwas, but when Solo Leveling first came out and first rose to popularity, it was a relatively new concept. Also, whose idea was it to introduce Cha Hae-In in the scene where she says 0 words and they do a crotch shot? This is your closest thing to a female lead, and you are instantly objectifying her. As I am a testament to, this series has female fans as well. Could we please have a bit more of a complex character than, oh, is strong woman, is hot, has no voice. Seriously, who gave the okay for this scene? I just want to talk. One thing the anime does have going for it, it's gotten better as we've gotten further through it. Which, for the overall plotline of the story, tracks. The first arc of the story is pretty boring compared to some of the cool plotlines we get later. I think pretty much everyone prefers badass, can defeat an entire army without lifting a single finger Jinwoo, over the earlier run screaming from every enemy Jinwoo. But I do acknowledge the latter is needed in order to get to the former and make it a more satisfying character arc overall. I do still have hope though that this anime might end up being more than just okay. And that hope was given to me by a scene in episode 6 that I think is actually better than the original scene that we get in the manhwa. That's still not saying much since it's the only scene that's been better so far, but it is something. I gotta admit, I don't really remember the first time Jinwoo crossed the line into murdering people. I remembered vaguely that it was a thing he had to do because people were threatening his life, but The moment he actually crossed the line wasn't a clear-cut moment from the manhwa in my mind. As I watched episode 6 and saw him confronted by Hwang Dong-seo and his lackeys, and the little pop-up comes up saying that he needs to kill them or his heart will stop, I was like, oh yeah, that was a mechanic of the story. But then the scene takes a turn as Jinwoo really comes to grips with this information and begins to harden his heart to do what he must to survive. And then the music kicks in and really kicks the scene up a notch. This is gonna come from me. Vitally, the soundtrack is doing something for these action scenes. Dark Aria is so good, and I would love to play the full song and scene for you, but Japan do not mess around with their copyright. And I don't really want this video to get taken down, so I'm just gonna give you guys a link. The somber music really puts into context how brutal of a scene this is. Sure, Jinwoo has killed monsters before, but this is an action from which there's no returning. If he does this, he's decided he's willing to take others' lives in order to achieve his goals. He has to decide exactly how far he is willing to go to survive and, in turn, protect his own family. He has to take 5 lives just to preserve his own, and he may have to take more in the future. That's a heavy reality. And if we look at the same scene in the manhwa, we can see that they do try to attach some sort of weight to this action as well. They use a lot of flashback scenes of him being near dead, a lot of inner monologue is used, and they do show blood and gore. But, as they say, music is a universal language, and adds a gravitas that I don't think you could get no matter how well this scene was drawn out. Do not knock over the teacup. That will not end well. This is also the first scene when we get a proper taste of badass Jinwoo. We got in little amuse-bouches up until this point, but this is finally something to actually sink our teeth into. The iconic dark outline with the shining blue eyes also makes an appearance, which you'll love to see. So there's also a decent chance that the second half of this season is where the anime really shines. They've got 6 episodes left to really turn this around. To go back to the music of the show for a second though, to be honest, I'm not quite sure Hiroyuki Sawano was the right choice for this show. They made a big deal of plastering his involvement up in the trailer, as he isn't well known in the scene, but I'm just not sure he fits the theme of this show that well. He does a good job in this scene, but in the rest of the show so far, pretty much nothing. I think while he can do very grand and epic music, his signature sound maybe doesn't align with what fans of the show thought the sound of this particular franchise would be. For proof of this, you just have to look at the MMV edits fans have made for this series in the past. There's epic music, sure, but it's more using rock and electronic instruments rather than orchestral. Outside of Dark Aria, the music for the anime so far is pretty mid. Opening and ending aside, pretty much all the other fight scenes, even when they're well animated, feel a little boring because of the lack of interesting instrumentals, to me at least. Let me give an example to demonstrate my point. Here is a short clip from episode 4 of Jinwoo fighting with the original instrumental. Now, here is that same scene, but with what I feel is a more appropriate soundtrack for it. Let me know in the comments if you agree that the second one fits the scene more. Or maybe I'm completely crazy and I'm totally wrong. Just a gal with an opinion. Also, a quick tangent. I hate how whiny they make Jinwoo in this scene. Yes, it's meant to be a defining moment of him, of realizing he can actually take down monsters, but the way he screams is the same way he screamed in the scene where he lost an arm and a leg, and this is just so much less dire. Trust me, A1, you do not want to try and replicate a Black Clover situation where, no matter how good your show is, no one can stand to watch it because of the protagonist's ear-shrieking voice. I really hope A1 Pictures can pull off the second half of this season, because if the anime community perceives this as a failure to adapt such a beloved piece of media, I think A1 Pictures is gonna be on the receiving end of a rather large amount of anger. You know how butthurt anime fans get over even the most minor of perceived failures. Oh, you deviated from the original plotline by even an inch? Well, alright, get out the pitchforks, boys! Even if the second half is really good though, I can't imagine it getting ratings of much higher than 8 out of 10s. Just because even if it is a really solid adaptation, they haven't done anything interesting with it. There's no action scenes that are really unique or character moments that feel really touching. There's a lot of scenes where it feels like, in terms of adapting it, they're doing the bare minimum to, like, reach the same standard as the manhwa but not go any higher. Hopefully this first season does at least well enough to warrant a second one being made, because personally I do want to give A1 Pictures another shot, and I think if we did get a second season, it would only be better, as the anime progresses through the plot of the source material and we get to the interesting arcs. Like, man, I would love to see the Jeju Island arc made a reality in anime. That would just be so cool. Solo Leveling is one of those manhwas that really deserves an anime, just to bring some of the epicness to life. Whether A1 Pictures can actually live up to the epicness of those scenes in comic form into animation form is yet to be seen, but I like to be optimistic about it. If it does end up being awful, I'll complain about it to no end then, but for now, I hope it's good.